Edith had always lived a simple, quiet life in a small town. Her days were filled with little routines: morning walks to the market, reading her favorite books, and spending time with her garden. She was content, but deep down, there was always a nagging feeling that something was missing. She had raised her children, helped her neighbors, and enjoyed the peacefulness of her old age, but as time passed, she couldn't shake the thought, was this really all there was? One day, while sitting in her favorite armchair, Edith picked up a magazine. It was filled with stories about people accomplishing extraordinary things, young and old. There was a particular story about a woman who had taken up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at 60 and was now a local champion. The thought of learning something so dynamic and challenging sparked something inside Edith. It was a long shot, but what did she have to lose? She immediately looked up local jiu-jitsu gyms. The first one she found was a few miles away, in a bright, clean building filled with pictures of strong athletes. The gym was known for its high-level training and many prestigious instructors. The thought of stepping into such a competitive world seemed overwhelming, but Edith was determined. She called the gym and signed up for a trial class. The day of her first class, Edith felt nervous. She had never done anything like this before. As she entered the gym, she saw a group of people stretching and warming up. The first thing that struck her was how young everyone was. There were men and women in their 20s and 30s, their bodies strong and fit, wearing their colorful GI uniforms. The youngest students were lifting weights, while others were practicing moves on the mats. It was obvious that they were serious about their training. Edith's transformation over the past several months had been remarkable. She wasn't just an older woman who showed up at the gym, she had become an integral part of the community. Her presence was no longer met with surprise or doubt. She was a respected member of the gym, admired not only for her progress but for her determination and positive attitude. By now, Edith had learned to perform most of the basic jiu-jitsu techniques. She was still working on perfecting them, of course, but the growth she had shown since that first class was undeniable. The soreness that used to leave her feeling defeated now became a sign of progress. It was the physical reminder that she had put in the effort and was reaping the rewards. But for Edith, the real victory was not in the moves she could now execute or the holds she could escape. It was in the shift she felt within herself. She had discovered a resilience she never knew she had. Every class, every practice, and every sparring session had been a test of her mental and physical limits, and she had passed them time and again. One evening, after a particularly challenging class, Mike approached Edith with a smile. "You've come a long way, Edith. You've really grown in both skill and confidence. I think it's time you did something special. I'd like to promote you to a higher belt." Edith blinked in surprise. She had never thought of herself as someone who needed a belt. The journey itself had always been her focus, not the color of the fabric around her waist. But she couldn't deny that hearing those words from Mike made her feel proud. "I don't know about that, Mike," Edith said with a chuckle, wiping the sweat from her face. "I'm just happy to be here, learning and growing." Mike smiled warmly. "You've earned it, Edith. The belt is just a symbol of your progress. It's not about being the best, it's about showing up, putting in the work, and improving every day. And you've done all of that. I'm proud of you." A wave of emotion washed over Edith. She had always been the one to encourage others, to support her family, to cheer on the people around her. But now, someone was recognizing her efforts, her perseverance, and her journey. She had come so far, not just physically, but emotionally as well. The gym, once a place of uncertainty and discomfort, had become a place of growth and belonging. Edith accepted the promotion, though she knew that it wasn't the title that mattered. It was the experiences, the lessons, and the people she had met along the way. Her journey wasn't defined by a piece of fabric around her waist, it was defined by the moments of triumph and struggle that had shaped her into the person she was now. As Edith continued her training, she became more and more confident. Her sparring sessions were no longer filled with uncertainty and hesitation. She knew how to defend herself, how to stay calm under pressure, and how to use the techniques she had learned to outsmart her opponents. She wasn't the strongest in the gym, and she certainly wasn't the fastest, but she had developed something even more powerful, the ability to think strategically, to use her mind as much as her body. And it showed in her sparring. One afternoon, a few weeks after her promotion, Edith found herself sparring with a new student, a young woman who had just started at the gym. She was strong, and she had the natural athleticism that many of the younger students had, but she lacked the experience that Edith had gained over the past few months. They squared off, and Edith's first instinct was to use her speed and focus to control the match. The young woman tried to take Edith down, but Edith stayed calm, using her guard to hold her position. She moved smoothly, adjusting her weight and shifting her body to avoid being pinned. The young woman was clearly frustrated as she tried again and again to break through Edith's defense, but Edith was patient. She let the young woman make the mistakes, knowing that with each failed attempt, she would be one step closer to her goal. Finally, Edith saw an opening. She used a technique she had learned only a few weeks ago, a simple move that had taken her a while to master. With a quick shift of her hips and a subtle movement of her hands, she managed to take the young woman's back. The crowd in the gym, who had been watching the sparring session, let out an appreciative murmur. Edith had controlled the match, and she had done it with calm precision. The young woman tapped out, and Edith helped her up, offering a friendly smile. "You're getting there. Keep practicing, and you'll be amazing in no time." The young woman smiled back, clearly impressed. "Thanks, Edith. You really know what you're doing." As Edith walked off the mat, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. It wasn't about the win, it was about the fact that she had made it this far. She had come from someone who had no idea what she was doing in the gym to someone who could hold her own against younger, stronger opponents. And most importantly, she had gained the respect of her peers. The gym had become more than just a place to train. It had become a community, a family of sorts, where everyone young and old, experienced and new came together to learn and grow. Edith had found a place where she could challenge herself, push her limits, and, most importantly, feel a sense of belonging. As time went on, Edith continued to mentor the newer students, sharing her story and encouraging them not to give up. She had learned that age was just a number and that it was never too late to start something new. Her journey had been hard, and it had tested her in ways she never expected, but it had also given her something invaluable, a sense of purpose, confidence, and strength that she had never known before. Looking around the gym one evening, Edith realized that she had become exactly what she had always hoped for, a symbol of perseverance and resilience. She wasn't the strongest, the fastest, or the youngest, but she was a fighter. And that was what mattered. A few of them glanced over at Edith as she entered, wearing a loose, comfortable outfit. She didn't own a GI yet, as she was still unfamiliar with the sport. The students' eyes lingered for a moment, then returned to their own routines. Edith, feeling self-conscious, walked to the front desk, where a friendly instructor named Mike greeted her. Mike was young, tall, and confident, with a welcoming smile that made Edith feel a little more at ease. He handed her a simple white belt and showed her to a spot on the mat. The next day, Edith returned to the gym, despite feeling the aches in her body from the previous class. Her knees were sore from the warm UPS, and her arms felt heavy from the sparring session. But Edith wasn't the type of person to back down from a challenge, no matter how tough it seemed. She had always believed that no matter your age, if you put your mind to something, you could achieve it. Over the next few weeks, Edith kept coming back to the gym. Each day felt like a fresh challenge, but she wasn't willing to let any of it stop her. Her body was still sore from the previous day's training, but every morning, she woke up early, put on her comfortable workout clothes, and set off to the gym with determination in her heart. She knew this wasn't going to be easy, but nothing worth doing ever was. Weeks passed, and Edith continued to show up at the gym. Her body was still sore, and every morning she felt the weight of each class in her joints and muscles. But the soreness was becoming a reminder of the hard work she was putting in, and it didn't stop her. If anything, it pushed her to keep going. Each class, she felt herself getting stronger, more confident, and more skilled at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Edith wasn't the fastest or the strongest in the gym, but she was improving. She could now perform basic techniques with more control and precision, and while she wasn't tapping out anyone yet, she was learning how to defend herself in ways she hadn't thought possible. The other students in the gym began to notice the change in her. No longer was she the elderly woman who looked out of place, she was becoming someone to watch. One evening, after class, Edith was wiping the sweat from her brow when Mike approached her. "I've been watching you, Edith. You've come a long way. You've really got the hang of some of the basics now. Have you noticed it yourself?" Edith nodded, smiling. "It's been slow, but I'm starting to feel a little more confident. I'm not where I want to be yet, but at least I'm not the same person who walked in here a few months ago." Mike chuckled. "Exactly. It's all about progress, not perfection. And you're getting better with every class." He paused for a moment. "Have you considered stepping it up a little? Maybe sparring with someone a bit more challenging? I think you're ready." Edith's stomach fluttered at the thought. Sparring with someone tougher seemed intimidating, but Mike had a point. She had been training for months now, and she knew she couldn't stay in her comfort zone forever. There was only one way to grow, and that was by pushing herself. "I think you're right," Edith said after a moment. "I'm ready to try something new." Mike smiled, pleased with her decision. "Great. I'll set something up for you. Just keep doing what you've been doing. I have no doubt you'll handle it." A few days later, Mike arranged for Edith to spar with a more experienced student, Aaron, a purple belt who had been training for a few years. Aaron was in his 30s, and he had a calm, focused demeanor. Edith had watched him spar a few times before, and she knew he was skilled. But this time, it was her turn. She felt nervous as they squared off on the mat. Mike was nearby, watching, and the gym was quiet except for the sound of footsteps and the soft hum of the air conditioning. Edith had never faced someone like Aaron before. He was fast, and his movements were smooth and calculated. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, Edith focused. She took a deep breath, remembering everything she had learned so far. She wasn't here to win. She was here to learn. The match began, and Aaron immediately took control, pushing Edith into a defensive position. She struggled to keep up, but she didn't panic. She used what she had learned, staying calm and waiting for an opening. Aaron tried to pass her guard, but Edith managed to maintain control. For the first time, she wasn't just reacting. She was thinking, planning, and executing. There were moments when Edith felt herself slipping. Aaron's movements were faster, and she could feel the strength in his arms as he tried to break free from her guard. But she didn't give up. Instead of letting fear take over, she reminded herself that this was part of the learning process. Even if she lost, the important thing was that she kept fighting. As the match progressed, Edith began to feel a sense of pride. She wasn't making the same mistakes she had made in the past. She was adjusting, adapting, and using her experience to her advantage. Aaron, too, seemed impressed. Every time he tried to move into a dominant position, Edith managed to stay calm enough to defend herself. Finally, after a few minutes of back and forth action, Aaron managed to sweep Edith and put her on her back. He went for a submission, but Edith was ready. She quickly adjusted her body and managed to escape from the hold. The gym erupted in applause, and Edith, though exhausted, smiled. She had done it. She had faced someone stronger, and though she hadn't won, she had held her own longer than she thought possible. Aaron helped her to her feet, a respectful smile on his face. "You did great, Edith. That was some impressive defense. I'm not sure I could have held that guard for as long as you did." Edith beamed, feeling a rush of pride. "Thank you, Aaron. I didn't expect to last that long." Mike came over and patted her on the back. "That was amazing, Edith. You're really starting to come into your own. Keep this up, and you'll be ready for anything." For the first time, Edith felt truly proud of her progress. The journey had been long, and the road ahead was still filled with challenges. But she had proven something to herself. She had faced someone more experienced, and she hadn't been overwhelmed. She had stayed calm, focused, and persistent. And that, in itself, was a huge victory. The weeks that followed were filled with more challenges, more sparring, and more progress. Edith kept working hard, continuing to improve in ways she never thought possible. The gym was no longer a place where she felt out of place, it had become a second home. The younger students, who had once looked at her with skepticism, now respected her dedication and strength. They saw how hard she worked and began to appreciate the quiet power she brought to every class. One day, after class, a few of the younger students came up to Edith. "We've been talking," one of them said, a young man who had always been polite but distant. "We just wanted to say, you're an inspiration. We've been watching you, and the way you keep showing up, even when it's tough, it really motivates us." Edith smiled, a bit surprised by the compliment. "Thank you. That means a lot to me. You've taught us that it's not about how fast you are or how strong you are. It's about how much heart you have," another student added. Edith's heart swelled with pride. She had started this journey for herself, to prove that she could still learn and grow, no matter her age. But now, she realized that her journey had inspired others too. And that, she knew, was one of the most rewarding parts of all. The younger students at the gym had started to take notice of her. At first, there had been whispers, looks of disbelief, and even a few chuckles. Some of them still didn't understand why someone her age would want to take on such a physically demanding sport. But as time passed, Edith could sense a change in the air. People began to respect her dedication. She was there every day, showing up without fail, despite the bruises, the sore muscles, and the exhaustion. Slowly, her presence in the gym became normal. She wasn't just the elderly woman who didn't belong, she was a regular part of the class. It wasn't easy, though. She struggled with some of the techniques, and the sparring sessions were still difficult. There were times when she felt like giving up, like maybe she wasn't cut out for it after all. But every time she felt that way, she would remind herself of why she started this journey in the first place, to prove to herself that she could do it. She wasn't here for anyone else. This was her challenge. One evening, after class, Mike pulled her aside. He had been keeping an eye on her progress and saw how much effort she was putting in. "You're doing great, Edith," he said with a warm smile. "I've noticed your improvements. You've come a long way since your first class." Edith smiled back, though she felt like there was still so much more to learn. "It doesn't feel like it," she replied, feeling the weight of the work she still had ahead. "I'm still far from where I want to be." Mike nodded. "I get it. It's easy to get discouraged when you're not seeing immediate results. But keep at it. You're stronger than you think. And remember, Jiu-Jitsu isn't about being the best in the room. It's about being better than you were yesterday." His words stuck with her as she left the gym that night. It wasn't about comparing herself to others. It wasn't about competing with the younger athletes or trying to outdo them. It was about her own progress, her own journey. Slowly, the frustration that had built up inside her began to ease. Edith's routine continued. Every class brought new challenges, but it also brought small victories. She started to remember the techniques more easily. When Mike demonstrated a new move, she could see how it would work in her mind before she even tried it. Some days, she got the moves right on the first try. Other days, she struggled and had to try several times before she got it. But she kept going. The sparring sessions were still tough, though. Her partners were always younger and stronger, but she had learned how to use her experience to her advantage. She wasn't as fast as they were, but she had a quiet, focused energy that allowed her to stay calm even in the toughest situations. And when she made a mistake, she didn't panic. She stayed focused on the task and corrected herself. One day, after sparring with a younger woman who had been training for a couple of years, Edith felt a small sense of victory. She had managed to avoid being pinned for a full minute, a huge improvement from where she had started. It wasn't a win in the traditional sense, but it was a win for her. The younger woman looked at Edith with respect, nodding in acknowledgement of her progress. "You're really improving, Edith," the young woman said, offering a smile. "I can't believe how fast you're picking it up." Edith smiled back, feeling a rush of pride that she hadn't felt in a long time. It was the first time one of her sparring partners had praised her. It made all the early struggles worth it. Later that week, Mike announced that the gym would be hosting a small competition for the members. It wasn't anything major, just an internal event where everyone could test their skills against one another. Edith felt a knot in her stomach when she heard the news. She wasn't sure if she was ready for something like that. Her confidence was still building, but she wasn't sure she was up to competing with anyone. Mike, noticing her hesitation, approached her after the class. "You're ready for this," he said with his usual calm encouragement. "I can see how much you've improved. You don't have to win, Edith. Just take part. It's about testing yourself, not about being the best." The idea of competing made Edith nervous, but Mike's words made sense. It wasn't about winning a medal. It was about seeing how far she had come and what she was capable of. After all, she had come this far, hadn't she? The competition day arrived, and Edith stood in front of the mats, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. The gym was buzzing with energy. Everyone was stretching, warming up, and preparing for the upcoming matches. Edith could see the same faces she had been training with for weeks. Some of them had been practicing for years, and they moved with a confidence that made her feel like a fish out of water. But this time, Edith was different. She wasn't intimidated. She had trained for this moment, just like everyone else. She knew she wasn't going to be the best, but she was going to give it everything she had. Her first match was against a man in his 20s, someone who had been training for about a year. He was taller and stronger, but Edith stayed calm. When the match started, she focused on her breathing and kept her movements controlled. She didn't win, but she didn't lose either. The match ended in a draw. For Edith, that felt like a victory. After the match, the younger man approached her and extended his hand. "That was great," he said, shaking her hand. "You're tough. I didn't expect that from you." Edith smiled, feeling a wave of satisfaction. She had proved something to herself that day. She wasn't just the older woman in the class anymore. She was a fighter. And this was only the beginning. As she walked into the gym, she saw the same group of younger athletes stretching and warming up. The sounds of their laughter and chatter filled the space. A few of them glanced over at Edith, but today, she didn't let it bother her as much. She had made the decision to stick with it, no matter how difficult it was. It wasn't about impressing anyone, it was about proving to herself that she could do it. Mike, the instructor, greeted her with a smile as she walked onto the mat. "Good to see you back, Edith. Ready to keep going?" he asked. She nodded, trying to hide the nervousness bubbling up inside her. "I'm here," she said, smiling back. I'm ready. The class began with more warm ups. Edith's muscles were still sore, but she pushed herself to keep going. She focused on each movement, trying to ignore the discomfort. The younger students, who had become accustomed to the routine, moved with ease and speed. But Edith kept going, even when she felt out of breath or when her joints creaked with each step. As the warm-up continued, Edith noticed the younger athletes around her. Some of them were whispering again, but she couldn't catch exactly what they were saying. She felt a pang of embarrassment, but this time, she refused to let it take over. She had already made up her mind. She wasn't going to quit, not this time. After the warm ups, Mike led the class through a series of basic Jiu-Jitsu techniques. Today, they focused on escapes, how to free yourself when an opponent has you in a hold. Edith listened carefully as Mike demonstrated the moves, his movements fluid and precise. He made it look so easy, but Edith knew better than to think it would be the same for her. When it was time to practice, Edith struggled with the techniques. Her body wasn't used to the movements, and she found it hard to coordinate her arms and legs in the right way. When she tried to escape from her partner's hold, she ended up twisting her body awkwardly and falling to the mat. A few of the younger students chuckled softly, but Edith kept her head down and got back up. Mike noticed her struggles and approached her with a kind expression. "It takes time, Edith. You're doing well. Just keep practicing, and it'll come together," he said, offering a comforting smile. Edith appreciated his encouragement, but it was hard to ignore the feeling that the others were watching her. She couldn't help but wonder what they were thinking. Was she too old for this? Was she embarrassing herself? But she reminded herself again why she was here. She was here to learn, to challenge herself, and to prove that she could push through obstacles, no matter how big they seemed. As the class continued, they moved on to sparring again. Edith was paired with another student, a younger man, around her son's age. He was a blue belt, which meant he had a few years of experience under his belt. He looked at Edith with a friendly smile, but she could tell he didn't expect much from her. It was the same look she had seen the day before, a mix of politeness and doubt. The sparring began, and Edith immediately felt the difference in strength. Her partner was fast, his movements controlled and sharp. He easily took her to the ground, pinning her arms to the mat. She tried to fight back, but she wasn't fast enough. She could feel the sweat dripping down her face as she struggled beneath him. The others in the gym were sparring too, their movements much smoother than hers. It was frustrating, and she could feel the heat rising in her cheeks. But despite the frustration, Edith didn't give up. She took a deep breath and remembered what Mike had said, it would take time. Every step, every struggle, was part of the process. As she lay on the mat, she tried to refocus and think about what she could do differently. She shifted her weight slightly, trying to move her hips in a way that would give her more leverage. But her partner was just too strong. When the sparring session ended, Edith stood up slowly, her muscles aching. She felt exhausted, both mentally and physically. She wiped the sweat from her brow and took a deep breath, trying to shake off the frustration. She could hear the whispers again, but this time, she didn't let them get to her. Mike walked over to her after the sparring and gave her a nod of approval. "You did well today, Edith. It's a lot harder than it looks, right?" he said, his tone encouraging. Edith nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "I'll get there," she said, even though she wasn't sure how long it would take. The class ended soon after, and Edith gathered her things, ready to go home. She didn't feel like she had improved much, but she wasn't ready to quit. There was something inside her that refused to give up. She knew it wouldn't be easy, and she knew she would face more setbacks along the way, but she had come this far, and she wasn't about to stop now. On her way out of the gym, she caught a glimpse of the younger students chatting among themselves. One of them, a woman with short hair and a bright smile, waved at Edith. Edith hesitated but waved back. She was still the newcomer, the older woman who didn't seem to fit in, but she knew she was making progress in her own way. As Edith walked out into the cool evening air, she felt a sense of determination. The road ahead would be long, and the challenges wouldn't get any easier, but she was willing to face them. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was doing something just for herself. Something that didn't require her to be perfect, but that tested her strength in a different way. She smiled to herself, knowing she would return tomorrow, and the day after that. She had taken the first step, and there was no turning back. "I'll walk you through the basics today," Mike said with a smile. "Just take it easy and listen to your body. Don't worry about keeping up with everyone else." Edith nodded, grateful for his kindness. But as she looked around, the doubt started creeping in again. Everyone was so much younger, so much stronger. What if she couldn't keep up? What if she embarrassed herself? The class began with warm ups. As they jogged in place, Edith could feel her knees creak with each step. She wasn't as spry as she used to be, but she tried to push through. The instructor led them through various stretches and body weight exercises, but Edith could barely keep up. Her muscles ached, and she started to feel lightheaded. She slowed down to catch her breath, trying to hide the fact that she was struggling. A few younger students were looking at her now. Some smirked, others whispered among themselves. Edith could hear snippets of their conversation, something about "what is she doing here, and she's way too old for this." It stung, but she tried to ignore it. She had come here to challenge herself, and she wasn't about to let their judgment stop her. After the warm ups, Mike moved on to teaching some basic techniques. The first one was a simple guard position, lying on your back with your legs raised, ready to control an opponent's movement. Edith followed along as best as she could, but her legs felt stiff, and her back hurt from lying on the mat for too long. She kept glancing around at the other students, who seemed to master each movement effortlessly. Mike demonstrated how to use your body to control your opponent's movements, but Edith felt like she couldn't even do it right. She tried to focus, but it was hard to ignore the chuckles from the group behind her. "Just relax, Edith," Mike encouraged. "It takes time. Don't get discouraged." But it was hard not to feel discouraged. When it came time to spar with a partner, Edith was paired with a younger man who was wearing a blue belt. He looked at her with a polite smile, but it was clear that he didn't take her seriously. His hands were firm and controlled as he easily moved her into various positions. Edith tried her best to keep up, but he was far too strong for her. She couldn't escape when he pinned her down, and it felt like she was helpless. She couldn't help but feel embarrassed. The other students were watching, and she could hear some of them giggling. They didn't believe she belonged here. Despite the embarrassment, Edith refused to give up. She had lived through difficult times in her life, raising children, losing loved ones, and facing health challenges. She had always found a way to keep going, even when it seemed impossible. This was no different. As the class ended, Edith gathered her things slowly, trying not to let the stares and whispers affect her too much. The instructor, Mike, noticed her hesitation and gave her a reassuring pat on the back. "You did great for your first class," he said. "Don't be too hard on yourself. It's all about progress, not perfection." Edith smiled weakly and nodded. She knew she wasn't great at jiu-jitsu yet, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that she had taken the first step. She had shown up, despite the doubts and the judgment, and she wasn't about to back down now. Tomorrow, she would come back. Tomorrow, she would try again.